Primate is directed by Johannes Roberts and stars Johnny Sequoia, Troy Kutzer, among others. And in this story, it deals with a primate that's being raised by a family in Hawaii. And pretty much there's an incident that happens where the primate gets bitten by another animal and gets rabies and ends up going on a rampage, as you've seen from the trailers. And it deals with the main girl in the film and her friends having to survive the night, and they pretty much get secluded after they don't have anywhere to go, and her father ends up leaving to go on a business trip or whatever, and they're having to survive the night as the chimpanzee is running amok. Now here's some backstory. Now this movie was directed by Johannes Roberts, who I've been kind of hit and miss with on some of his movies. I didn't mind Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City, and I also didn't mind the second 47 Meters Down on Cage, but I wasn't really a big fan of the first on 47 Meters Down, and I've heard mixed things about the second Strangers movie, Strangers Paradise, but I still need to check that one out. But going into this film, it really got me really curious, because imagine if you take the scene that was from that movie Nope, where it showed the flashback about the primate known as Gordy, and doing like a whole like movie surrounded like that, where the tension just really builds up high, and you're having like a cross between that movie and then also take the premise of Cujo. And that's what you get with something like this. And from the trailers, it gives you exactly what you want to see out of a movie like this. And for the first movie that I've seen of January so far this year, of 2026, this was definitely starting out with a good time. Nothing really great, but I did have a really excellent time with it, and it was certainly everything I expected it to be. To get my pros out of the way, I thought the cast in this were fantastic. I liked the main girl, Johnny Sequoia. I'm not really too familiar with her work. I mean, I know that she did play in the revival of Dexter a few years ago with Dexter New Blood, but I haven't seen that. I can't really comment because I haven't really watched much of Dexter. But she was great in this as playing the older sister that's trying to take care of her younger sister in the film, and having to, at first trying to be very communicative and everything to Ben, who is the primate in the film. And I like the way that they implement this type of bond that it kind of goes with her and and Ben at first, where if it seems like if they could have really touched more base on that in the writing, the movie could have probably added more emphasis on it. But for the first half, when they're starting to see it, it really showcases that she is very caring and everything. And the main guy too, Troy Kutzer. I'm not sorry if I can't get his name right. The guy who played off of Coda. Not only was this guy really, has great body language in his work, with him being deaf and everything, but the way that the sign language comes into play too, I thought was fascinating, because it's interesting how they kind of also took some cues from movies like Congo or the recent Planet of the Apes reboot trilogy, and how they're implementing sign language for the in this case with the chimpanzee having to be smart and everything. And there's even a running thing where he's using like a device where he's able to press buttons and stuff and it talks and everything. So I thought that was pretty clever too. And then the rest of the cast are fine too. Nothing really to write home about. But what really works with this movie the most is definitely the setup and the tension, with how you pretty much get the characters all into place, where they're just trying to have the main girl and her friends are just trying to have a party and invite these guys over and stuff, and and everything. And things go loose as soon as the chimpanzee ends up, as soon as Ben starts to wreak havoc and everything. And let's just say that they don't hold back on the gore in this. They definitely do stick with practical effects for the most part, and from the way they also use the way that they bring Ben to come to life and stuff was not only it's very cool that they went with practical effects, but it was also kind of noticeable at times, which I'll get into a little minor con, in how they do. You can definitely tell that it looks kind of rubbery at points, but it's still. I'm still glad they stuck with doing with the whole like animatronics and practical effects with having to move the character and everything, with moving the chimpanzee and everything. And this movie really puts you in the type of tension where characters are hiding in closets. And you got a really great score that it wasn't by John Carpenter, but it definitely has a score that's very reminiscent of his work from the 80s. And it put me in the right type of atmosphere that you want to kind of go with, because even the titles when they're opening and everything, it feels like it's going for that type of throwback. And I love that. It really seems to me that Johannes Roberts is the type of director to hire for those type of movies, like from what I also heard with Strangers Paradise, which had a very similar score like that. So. And even I heard with that movie that has like a similar feel with there's a famous pool scene that takes place. So hey, if when I take the time to actually watch Stranger's Parade at night, I might actually watch that with this one and kind of do like a double feature with it. And this movie doesn't hold back on its brutality when you're seeing like people getting ripped, you're seeing bones breaking, all kinds of stuff. It's just insane how much they get away with this. And if I had to get into some of my minor cons that kind of hold the movie back, is that it does feel like the movie gets into some stuff that's, very rinse and repeat of what we see in other films. Mostly it's trying to take its inspiration, its premise similar to Cujo, where if you kind of seen that film, you pretty much know how this one's going to go with it. But so if they ever did like an adaptation of that movie, this is probably, I think, the closest we get to a readaptation for it. Even though I still really enjoy the original. And so that does kind of fall into that kind of, and so that is something that you can definitely call back on some very familiar territory. And there's also a couple of times where characters really kind of make some dumb decisions where, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but let's just say there's a character that's not really paying attention on something. It's like, really? You couldn't really see where you're walking and stuff? But that was just kind of a minor thing. But then there's also a part where you're like, okay, it's like if these characters are really trying to really avoid all the suspicion, they have to like really sneak around. And I know the whole point is to not get caught and everything, otherwise we wouldn't have a movie. But there are some decisions where you're just like, okay, that could have worked out a little better, so to speak. You know what I mean? And so there's that. And then there's also some characters that are just more cannon fodder that are just there to get killed and stuff. And they definitely had it coming. So it's like, it gives you what you expect from the movie. But with that being said, though, I still had a great time with this. And while the writing definitely could have amped up more, especially getting more of the bond between Ben and the main girl, I think could have really took off a lot better with and everything. And they could have, maybe put in some more emphasis on some of the other characters as well. But other than that, I still had a fun time. And with that, I'm going to give the movie a high compelling grade on the Film Freaks meter. And so, for those of you who have also seen Primates, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.